Time to move on to perspective on the programme. And if you've been following our programmes here on France 24 for the last 6 months, you'll know that it's just over 30 years now since the Berlin Wall fell. We've given it plenty of coverage. And optimism, of course, at that point, for a new start spread over Central and Eastern Europe. The last country to change tack, Romania, with the execution of Nicolae Ceausescu on Christmas Day, 1989. Now, at the time, the fall of communism was rather praised as a victory, if you like, for democracy over authoritarianism. 30 years later, though, it is this very part of Europe where so many of the strongest popular movements are emerging. A paradox, perhaps. Well, yes, it is a paradox, according to my guest today, and one that he attempts to explain in his latest book, Le populisme en Europe centrale et orientale, or Populism in Central and Eastern Europe. Historian Roman Krakovsky, thanks very much for being with us on the programme today. First of all, just tell us why you think this is such a paradox.
Well, when I was giving lectures about Central and Eastern Europe, we always explained that the fall of communism was the victory of democracy, and suddenly, 30 years later, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I try to understand how to explain what is going on in Central and Eastern Europe over the past few years. And I think this paradox is a good way to start, because we have to rebuild the way to interpret or to build narratives about Central and Eastern Europe and what is going on over the past 30 years.
So how do you explain it then?
Well, often we explain the rising of populism as by economic reasons, and it doesn't work. Some countries are experiencing a huge economic boom, such as Czech Republic. So it's the rise of populism is a mix of different phenomena, and some of them might be a huge demographical crisis. The countries of this area lost over the past 25 years between 15 and 20% of populations, and the prospects of the United Nations for the next 25 years are similar. So this might be one reason. Another reason is the changing of international context, where United Nations and European Union, which introduced democracy in this area during the 90s, are experiencing a huge crisis. And this space is becoming a battlefield for new powers such as China and Russia. And last but not least, there was a huge migrant crisis, 2015-16, and this process just amplified existential crisis this area is going through.
And presumably that's now spreading as well. I mean, as an Anglophone, obviously we're seeing the rise of the right in countries like the UK with Brexit, and also in the US with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think what's going on in Central and Eastern Europe is not specific to this area, but due to the historical development and a certain fragility of this area situated between East and West, maybe we can see more clearly what is on the way in other parts of Europe, and maybe anticipate the development and prevent what might happen also in France or UK or United States.
And from what you're saying, it's not just, I mean, some people say that it's just a natural cycle. You know, we become used to one thing and we're not happy with it anymore, so we feel we need change. So that's when populism tends to rise. I mean, do you think there's a bit more to it than that, obviously?
Well, it's more complicated. Populists are saying, liberal democracy is not working. It put under question national interest, and it threatens the survival of national community. So let's bring something else. Let's reinvent democracy by introducing more illiberal principles, where you put in the heart of the system no liberal values. They don't deny them, but national interest. This is what American president put very clearly with American First, or Hungary First for Hungarian leaders.
Yeah.
And
let me just ask you quickly, just before we run out of time. I mean, do you think populism has reached its peak, or do you think it will go further now?
Well, it might go further, and especially what is interesting is the populism is a political logic to conquest the power. And once the state, populist state, conquer the power, it can attack counterpowers such as media or justice, and to reinforce its authoritarian tendencies. This is what is actually going on in Poland or in Hungary today.
Great to have you with us on the programme. Thanks very much for coming in. Roman Krakovsky, thanks very much for joining us to talk about the rise of populism there.